Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all for joining a special planning commission meeting on October 30th. Can I get a pledge of allegiance? Can I get a roll call, please?
Sure. Oh, good, we're on. Commissioner Evans. Just, you can wave.
Here.
Commissioner DeMond.
Here.
Commissioner Benjamin.
Here.
Vice Chair Holt.
Here.
Chair Hernandez.
I am present.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is a public meeting, and we have our public forum before we get to the study session. So if anybody would like to make a public comment on anything not on the agenda tonight, now is your opportunity to step forward and make your public comment. Not having any green sheets, nor seeing anybody stepping forward to ask the microphone, I will close public forum, and we'll move on to the study session. So I'm going to start with a few comments, kind of set the stage here. So after 4 years of community discourse, many neighborhood listening sessions, and nearly 24 public hearings by the GTAC, the Planning Commission, and City Council, our little town of Half Moon Bay has clearly expressed its priorities for new general plan. We need to fix traffic, especially on weekends. We need to protect and enhance our small town charm, the breathtaking views from the foothills to the sea, and the natural resources and open space that surround us. We need to protect, enhance, and expand pedestrian trails, bike paths, and access to the beach. We need to protect our farmers and the land they till. And we need to make our community more resilient, more affordable, and an even better place to live. Basically, we want it all. I don't know if pumpkin traffic can be fixed, but otherwise we have high expectations. And the challenge before us is putting in place policies that balance these competing priorities in a way that works for decades to come. For the last year, this commission has taken this task to heart. We've worked in subcommittee with professional planners, esteemed biologists, the preeminent law firm on the Coastal Act, as well as the former executive director of the California Coastal Commission, Charles Lester, to synthesize your detailed feedback into the land use policy draft you received today. In parallel, this commission has also been working on citywide plans or master plans with the Bike and Pedestrian Advisory Committee and Parks and Recreation. We've also taken up housing and accessory dwelling unit amendments and 2 community conversations around housing. You see before you various documents and public comments city staff have commissioned, collected, reviewed, revised, and published as part of this process. I think Jill has some photographic evidence of that as well.
Yeah.
In particular, I would call to your attention work that has been done completing an inventory of natural resources, which includes our water, our soil, our beaches, and the great diversity of flora and fauna that call the coastside home. We have an obligation to not only protect threatened and endangered species, but to also balance those protections against individual property rights. Understanding where habitat and other natural resources exist allows us to provide clarity to what kinds of development are allowed and where, and what obligations to protect natural resources run with the land. To that end, we've completed the first comprehensive inventory of sensitive species and habitat throughout the city. We've also provided a thorough update to our inventory of other natural resources in existing development. Most importantly, we've made a tremendous effort to make the LUP more readable and more clear. We've included relevant sections of the Coastal Act in the appropriate chapters. We've removed jargon and redundancy. And we've taken great care to remove inconsistencies and ambiguous language. We want our land use policies to be clear to normal people as well as attorneys. I'd like to call out Jill Eckes, Brittany Casalino, and our city staff who've done yeoman's work in pulling this together. The foundational work of the General Plan Advisory Committee, several members of whom are on this commission, and several of whom are in the audience tonight, as well as our current city council who provide direction and funding to make this work happen. So as you dig into the details, we ask that you approach this body of work with the bigger picture in mind. have we incorporated your feedback? And have we struck the right balance in developing these policies? Do these policies lay the right foundation for a general plan that meets and balances the priority of our community in the right way? With your guidance, we intend to submit our final policy update to the California Coastal Commission in the next 6 months. A few months after that, we will submit our implementation plan and then the zoning amendments necessary to bring our city code into conformance with these policies. Today's meeting is an introduction to the changes we've made. The process we will follow to make additional improvements and a chance for you, the public, who make up our community, to continue to make your voices heard. Today we have 6 chapters ready for you to start reviewing at your own pace. We plan to have chapters on public works and development available in December. And if you really care about the future of the coast side, this is the time to lean in. If you feel daunted by the size of this document, pick a chapter. Just pick one chapter and read it. And dig in. You don't have to get through the whole thing, and we welcome the public feedback. Everybody has the right to participate in this process, and the more folks who do, the better this document will be. So, with that, I want to thank everybody for helping us with a transparent and hopefully accountable process. I'm going to turn it over to our Community Development Director, Jill.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to take just a moment before we jump in to introduce a few people, and that includes staff, and it just so happens we can introduce our new city manager tonight, Bob Nesbitt.
Thank you, Jill. So my name is Bob Nesbitt. I'm the new city manager for your city, the city of Half Moon Bay. I just started work yesterday, and this is my second day. And it has been, people use the fire hose analogy, I guess, and it's been more like a waterfall of information. But it's been great. We're slowly transitioning. My wife and I plan to move here, hopefully within the next 6 to 8 months. For now, I'm going to kind of commute for a while and stay down when I can. For my first week, I'm staying locally at the Half Moon Bay Inn, 1 block away from City Hall. That's where I'm going to be this week, and it's just great to be here, and I look forward to meeting a lot of you. And my office is on the 2nd floor of City Hall, so please feel free to come up at any time and say hello. With that, I'll say in these first 2 days, it has been kind of like that waterfall, and I have had a chance to meet with Jill and her staff a little bit, but not too much, not as much as I would like. And I've probably gotten a thimbleful of this process to update the local coastal plan and the general plan. I heard more just now, and we just haven't had the opportunity yet. So I'm going to be sitting here with all of you learning tonight, and it was nice to hear the introduction from the chair, how it's been this process, 4 years, 1 year, and here we are today, and we're starting to roll it out with a game plan to finish. But what I would like to say that I've noticed already in just these first 2 days is the commitment from Jill and her team. So it was kind of mentioned by the chair, but I've noticed it in just the short time I've been here. Just to get to you today, whether you agree with what's in there, like what's in there, don't like what's in there, I can say in just 2 days of work, watching Jill and talking to her briefly, the commitment and the dedication to bring you what the staff has brought you today has just been really impressive. After I went and checked into my hotel last night, I decided that I should go back to my car and bring some boxes into City Hall. I didn't want to leave them in my car. It was like 9:30 at night. And so I go back there to sneak into City Hall, and there's a light on in City Hall, and it was Jill's office. And I'm like, she can't be still there. And I didn't want to sneak up on her, so I came in, and sure enough, she was in there preparing and getting ready for tonight's meeting. And I was just really impressed, and just to hear her talk about her energy in getting it to this point, I just think is really impressive. So I'm going to turn the mic back over, but before I do that, before I start, I actually think we should give the staff, Jill and her staff, a round of applause. Thank you.
All right, so just to introduce the other staff members, Heather Minner, our Assistant City Attorney, is here, and then Brittany Cozzolino, our Associate Planner, is next to me, and she'll be helping with our presentation tonight. We'd also, as the chair noted, acknowledge the General Plan Advisory Committee members who came out tonight, and we're looking forward to seeing you some more in January, and we'll coordinate a date with you. We'd love to have a joint study session as we move through this. And mostly, staff would like to acknowledge the LCP Update Subcommittee, Chair Hernandez and Commissioner Benjamin. As volunteers, they have given deeply their energy, expertise. They've sacrificed time away from family and other pursuits to work on your plan. And beyond even that, you will find their wisdom in every chapter of this document, and it has been our great pleasure to work with this subcommittee. So let's jump in. Our agenda is simple. We're going to take turns providing an overview, the high points of the 6 chapters that are out now, and they're about to be posted online. They should be online by close of business tomorrow. And then we'll go and make sure that we have time for a community comment and be very clear about next steps. We've got several meetings lined up, and we want you to know how they're going to roll out. And one more orientation item, because this is foundational to every chapter in the LCP update. City Council acknowledged a downtown core area quite some time ago, and they reconfirmed it, and that's the blue boundary. We've renamed it the Town Center, and so you'll see Town Center referred to in the document, but also when some of us are talking tonight. And I just wanted to make sure people knew what it was. We renamed it because anything with downtown starts to get quite confusing. We have Heritage Downtown, we have Downtown Half Moon Bay, we have downtown this and downtown that, and everyone has a different idea of what that is. So this is specifically the Town Center when we're referring to that. And we can get going now. So to kick it off, Chapter 4, Brittany is going to go ahead and cover that one.
Okay, so this chapter is a big reframe from the original land use plan, which assumed that agriculture was a dying industry in Half Moon Bay. Instead, we've seen its continued viability and major significance to the local community and the regional area. This chapter maps prime and non-prime agricultural land based on the Coastal Act definitions, using soil data from the National Resource Conservation Service, as shown on this slide. The policies provide protections for prime and non-prime ag land, as well as for existing operations, while anticipating redevelopment of agricultural land located in the town center. Policies also support the continued viability of ag by encouraging supplemental uses and farm worker housing. Finally, this chapter establishes a new agriculture land use designation to redesignate existing operations in urban reserve and open space reserve that have been more permanently protected through agricultural easements or Williamson Act contracts. And I'll turn it back to Jill for coastal access and recreation.
All right, thank you. So coastal access and recreation is Chapter 5. This is a chapter that we've redrafted significantly. This was one that you saw back in summer 2017, and we hope that you will see your input reflected in it. The Coastal Act requires us to provide for in the LCP that maximum coastal access is established, and that's a high bar, maximum. I've been challenged to think if we're meeting that or not, and we'll get your feedback on that. We're also coordinating this with a development chapter that will be coming soon to ensure that development does not interfere with access. And furthermore, this chapter covers recreation, which in addition to the public recreation and also ensuring that the city's own parkland is adequate to serve the needs of the local residents, we also need to provide for commercial visitor serving uses. So you'll get a lot more out of Coastal Access and Rec. When the development chapter comes out, you'll see a relationship between the two, but this will get you started. Figures have been updated. This one is coastal access points is really the focus here, and you'll note that several areas are new and also some improvement areas. So for example, we are now aware that State Parks is moving forward with an application to improve and actually provide vertical access at the terminus of Kelly down to the beach, and they have been preparing an application to move forward with that. We've also acknowledged the change that's happened with post-purchasing the Arroyo and Wavecrest and the intention to provide coastal access in that area, including a vertical access point. So we've been able to keep up with what's going on around us. This is a conceptual presentation of the Town Boulevard concept. The Town Boulevard came out of the GPAC and was reaffirmed by the Planning Commission. The idea is to improve the flow, the appearance, the identity, and definitely the safety and relationship of this main thoroughfare in this community for Half Moon Bay, for the people who live here. And I just want to make sure people understand those big blue lines are not new lanes. They are not, it's not a road widening project. It's just showing that there's kind of two strategies to it. The darker blue is located within the town center, and it's in that area that we would expect to have more crossings and to have a little bit different character where wayfinding signage and things like that are needed. At the two ends, the lighter blue area, we're looking at all kinds of approaches, which could include roundabouts and other ways to improve crossings. So just wanted to make that clear when you read about the Town Boulevard that you're not thinking it's about lanes. And then finally, just a note, during this 4-year period, the city also launched 2 master plans that are highly relevant to this update. One is the Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan, and then also the Parks Master Plan. Both of those have their thread right into this Chapter 5 here. The improvements in the Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan are shown in this map here, with the exception of a lot of the little minor things like sharrows and things like that. We're trying to keep a very clean, high-level map focused on crossing improvements, the major new facilities like the East Side Parallel Trail, and the things that meant a lot through the GPAC process and were confirmed by the Planning Commission. So we think you'll recognize your input in this and look forward to hearing from you about that. And of course, Coastal Access and Rec, just like everything else, interlaces with natural resources. So that's our segue to hand this over to Commissioner Benjamin, who will cover Chapter 6.
Thank you. Am I coming across? Okay. So let me just begin by saying it has been a privilege to work on this for you and with these people. So thank you for that opportunity. The Coastal Act obligates the City of Half Moon Bay to protect what it refers to as environmentally sensitive habitat areas. And in order to do that, we first have to identify them, and then we need to adopt and apply policies that will actually protect those. So this chapter is an attempt to do the first bit of that. What I want to do is talk to a couple of slides to introduce the format of the maps to you. And then when we're finished with those 3 or 4 slides, talk a little bit about policies and the process that we're using so that everybody is clear about the transparency that we are committed to maintaining. So the first slide is intended to be a sort of high-level summary that incorporates all of the insights that we have at the moment about where environmentally sensitive habitat areas are or are not. It doesn't lay out the degree of sensitivity. As information that's available to us changes, we may find that areas that are currently marked need a different marking. So the idea of this map is for a layman who is not interested in the nuance of whether it's habitat for a salt marsh common yellow throat or it's a wetland. Just want to know whether it's sensitive habitat or not. And it's also a guide for staff to begin the process of saying, where do I need to pay more attention when a proposal for development is presented in an area that's here. Next slide, please. So the first slide was citywide. Rather than look at all the detail and the somewhat more detailed descriptions of environmentally sensitive habitat areas, we'll just take roughly a third of the city to illustrate each of the different types of maps. The first more detailed map is what I would describe as an ecosystem map. So if you were a biologist and you identified, let's say, Central Coast riparian scrub or dune scrub or some other kind of habitat that describes a family of vegetation that lives on a particular type of soil in a particular environment, this is the map that describes those kind of habitats. We're calling them habitat types. The next one, please, illustrates the second kind of issue that we're laying out, which are our water resources. These are areas that you might identify as a water course or perhaps a riparian corridor or a creek, a wetland, an impoundment of some kind, and of course the ocean. So each of those, to greater or less degrees, has important environmentally sensitive habitat. Next slide. The third type of map is describing the areas within the city that are identified as environmentally sensitive habitat by virtue of them providing a space that is important to some stage of the life of a species that enjoys some distinction under our law. We call them special status species for sort. And there are federal, state, and local versions of these plants and animals. So one example I'd like to call out here is that we've expanded the protections to reflect the endangered is actually a term of art. Let's just say the monarch butterfly overwintering sites within the city. Monarch butterflies have gone through a precipitous decline in recent years, and by identifying those locations on our map, we feel that we can provide a little protection and do our bit to help that population recover. There are also some plants that live on the coastal prairie, which I neglected to point out in the prior slide, for which I apologize. But there is a Corsus popcorn flower is a species that exists in a fairly limited area. There's also, in another part of town, the perennial goldfield. These are plants that are valuable, that we need to protect. They have suffered some degree of threat, and we have an opportunity to do something about those. These are examples of habitat types and species that were unrecognized in the earlier LCP. That earlier LCP also said that California red-legged frogs and San Francisco garter snakes are species that we would care about if we ever saw them. So there's a lot of updating to be done with respect to that. So the idea here is to just give you a feel for how to read the maps that are on the wall. This is sort of a legend for you to think about. Now, having talked about them, let me turn to our policies. Our text and policies in the existing LCP borrow heavily from the county. And what we've done in this draft is to update them to characterize our local conditions, our local flora and fauna. And we think that's going to give us a chance to do a better job of protecting. It also updates to reflect the fact that we live in a world of climate change that was not even an issue when the first general local coastal program was developed. We also, as I said earlier, know that there are certain animals and plants that were not identified that are now part of our local flora and fauna. We are reflecting those sightings. Those are the little dots you see in the pictures. and there are quite a few more. We also wanted to respond to a GPEC assertion, rightfully, that there are some areas that are simply too hazardous or too sensitive to develop. And so we've introduced a land use designation called open space conservation. This exists in state law, but it didn't exist before in our local coastal program. So it represents an opportunity to do important preservation work for safety and environmental purposes. Lastly, I wanted to talk a little bit, just briefly, about our process. The maps you see in front of you represent what I like to think of as evidence-based planning. We use the city's collection of biological resource evaluations. Where it was proper, we supplemented them with ground truthing site visits by experts and local flora, some of whom are here tonight, and renowned animal experts. Where the visits would not be appropriate or might have required a greater investment than the city wanted to make at this stage, we've flagged that area that we think the resources might exist as potential. There's no shading, there's no hyperbole. We try to call it like we see it. And you can help us update this work because you know things that we don't know. You've seen animals where we might not have seen. Your bookcase may have an old biological resource evaluation report that we didn't come across when we were collecting the more than 60 BREs that our experts were using. You might have ideas for local coastal program policies that will better achieve the goals of the Coastal Act. And lastly, when we finally get this document done, you may feel that the Planning Commission has not applied those policies properly. And we need your help with all of those things. So thank you in advance for your past or your continued participation in our process. I'll give it back to Joe.
All right, now Brittany is going to cover hazards.
Thank you. Okay. So the coastal hazards chapter is framed in the context of climate change and sea level rise and uses information and direction from the city's 2016 sea level rise vulnerability assessment, as well as the Coastal Commission's sea level rise policy guidance. This chapter will supplement the general plan safety element, so it goes a little above and beyond the Coastal Act topics, but it will cover flooding, erosion, fire, earthquakes, tsunamis, and other geologic hazards that are addressed in Coastal Act policies, as well as our required safety element topics. Hazard areas are identified and mapped, while policies address hazard avoidance and protection measures to ensure the safety of the community and its many resources. As climate change and sea level rise will exacerbate hazards along the shoreline, the bulk of the chapter addresses concerns related to bluff erosion, shoreline development, and shoreline protection. Shoreline protective devices have known adverse impacts on shoreline processes, especially as sea levels rise. So policies limit new shoreline armoring to protect existing structures and critical facilities only, as well as address opportunities for removal of existing armoring. This chapter also addresses adaptation measures such as managed retreat, redevelopment standards, and public land acquisition as strategies for avoiding impacts to development, infrastructure, and coastal resources. And back to Jill for cultural resources.
Thank you. So cultural resources in Half Moon Bay include archaeological resources and historic resources. This chapter has added to our policies tribal consultation and following the policies for making sure Native American tribal consultation occurs early in the planning process. And in fact, the Coastal Commission just adopted a new policy for this, so the timing is excellent. We can feather into what they've done and make sure that we're consistent with that. The biggest change for this chapter from what's in the current LCP is that we've got a lot of historic resources in Half Moon Bay that really didn't have any policies around them. The LCP right now is focused on the archaeological resources as it needs to be, but historic resources got a little bit of a light touch, and so we've turned this up quite a bit, similar to what you might find in other cities around the Bay Area that have especially a cluster of resources in their downtowns. We would suggest looking in the future to see if the city would qualify for some district in some areas. The city has no Mills Act contract program. That's a tax relief program. We looked at restoration grants and other ways to support retention and maintenance of the resources. Similar to natural resources, one of the most important things with historic resources is maintaining an inventory and growing it over time as projects are proposed in different places. We learn more, and specifically showing the slide of the jail, the picture of the jail with what we used to call the barn, and we've recently learned is a garage. That will go into our inventory with our new updated evaluation, the DPR, Department of Parks and Rec form. So it's something that we have some good background on it, but this is really going to pull it together and have an organization for maintaining it. And another note I just want to make is these maps that you're seeing are they're GIS maps, and we've never had layers of mapping like this at City Hall. And when we're all done with this, these are going to get rolled into a really robust GIS system so that when anybody comes into the counter, you'll be able to see that with a planner. Or we'll also have an online version so folks can really learn a lot about different parts of town and things that are interesting to them. So I just wanted to note there's long-term return on investment in this work that we've been doing. I think that's about it, except I've got a segue to the last chapter, which is also with the jail and the garage. Relevant to scenic and visual resources, in the next chapter, we note that this is a resource that we see many visitors to Half Moon Bay because we're right there at City Hall. We see people take pictures, that picture right there, almost every day. So you'll notice in the updated scenic and visual resources that that's a protected view, actually. So that's a new thing. And with that, I'll pass it off and back to our chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. So scenic and visual resources, you don't need a PhD in environmental science or law degree to know that Half Moon Bay has some of the most stunning views anywhere in the world. The way I like to think about this is my daily experience walking on the bluff tops. The other day I had one of those magical mornings where you get the golden sunlight coming over the top of the Santa Cruz Mountains, breaking across the clouds. You see the raptors diving for their food. And then, I kid you not, rainbows and dolphins, right? The people I work with, I work from home, they think I work in a zoo, right? They don't understand like this fantasy land that we have here in Half Moon Bay, but it's a pretty special place. And so part of what we've done as an update to this chapter is we've taken great care to call out key visual corridors, view corridors. So examples would be, if we look on this map, if you see the black arrows here, many of them are pointing to the beach. We'll take Poplar Street, which is right in the middle, and Kelly. Those are scenic view corridors. They have a view all the way to the ocean. We have major beach access streets are called out as view corridors. We also have these view sheds, which are large swaths of land that when you're driving north and south on Highway 1, you get these amazing views of the Pacific Ocean, or you get these amazing views of the foothills. Right? So those are both important resources in the coastal act that are called out, and they're things that warrant protection. And so this is part of what makes Half Moon Bay such a spectacular place, is these view sheds, so we've taken great care to inventory them. As Jill's pointed out, there's also historic buildings of particular significance, the Johnston Barn, jail, a few other areas are called out on the map. And we've also taken care to look at view corridors that aren't necessarily in the city, but are called out in our code that we have to provide protections for. So if you look at the ridge lines of the mountains, there's some protection afforded to the ridge lines. We want to make sure that we have views of the foothills, and those have to be taken into consideration as we look at future development. They've also mapped out a few areas which are interesting. If you don't know Half Moon Bay, and I'll call out our new city manager, go check out some of these spots. There are vista points marked in red, which provide some of the most spectacular views. So you can go to Johnston House, or from that Half Moon Bay Inn where you're staying, you can walk a few blocks over to the cemetery. That's actually just outside the city limits. It's on the other side of the creek there. Has one of the most spectacular views of Half Moon Bay. So these are areas that help you get a sense of what we have here and what we've done from a policy perspective. If you open this chapter, you'll see an exhaustive inventory of existing conditions, both good and bad. So it's not just the natural resources, but we've looked at things like the utility lines that we see. This is something where we've adopted policies to start underground utilities across the city, in particular focusing on those key corridors where there are view sheds. So we want to get those out of the way so you can see the ocean or you can see the foothills. We've also, again, identified these vista points and these view corridors that we want to protect and enhance. There are some things that I'll say we need to have a discussion about, in particular the ridgeline. That's something where it's an open discussion, and this planning commission needs to provide direction. The old city policies were inconsistent, and so we as a commission need to figure out what are the protections we want to define from a policy perspective, and public feedback on those points is going to be very important as we go through this process. We've also drafted policies that build on the existing protections we've had, and we've added policies supporting dark skies. So one of the things the community has spoken fairly about is we want to move to more and more of, let's keep this a natural place, let's keep the lights pointed down, let's have broader policies that allow us to transition to more of a dark skies type of community. So it's good for the habitat, and frankly, it makes Half Moon Bay an even better place to live. Another key area, if you look in the document, especially the existing conditions, we've called out the heritage downtown, that ambiance, the buildings, the facades. It's an important part of our community, and it's something we recognize and we want to maintain and protect to the extent that we can. There are definitely some areas like streetscapes and utilities that we can work on, but these are areas for improvement. So if you are going to spend time looking at a chapter that's easy to understand, Chapter 9 is one you can start with. It's pretty short. Another one that's pretty easy to understand is our access, coastal access. So those are two chapters that spend time taking a look at. If you're really feeling ambitious, that natural resources chapter is only 100 pages long. I'd save that for last, quite honestly, but it's full of a lot of interesting stuff. But take one of these chapters, take a look at it, and think through it. So that's really what I wanted to cover. And Jill. I think to go back to where we started from, we have the guiding principles. And for those of you who sat through this process 4.5 years ago when we first got started. We spent a lot of time coming up with guiding principles. The GPAC went through those, and we made sure that we had sort of a mission statement to start this process. The first thing we wanted was to preserve our small town character. We wanted to protect scenic, agricultural, and environmental resources. We wanted to allow a land use mix and diversity. Bikes, trails, and connectivity of the transit system are very important to the community. We wanted to revitalize downtown. And we recognize the importance of accommodating tourism and supporting, and also balancing out with locals. How do we get around? How do we manage the community? The other thing that's not documented in the guiding principles, but the number one problem that we are aware of and trying to address with this general plan is traffic. So we are trying to put in place policies that get cars off the road, that get people walking, that allow us to have a transit system that relies on bikes, pedestrian access, and encourages things like mass transit, public transit, and different ways to get to the beach. So these are important things for us. So I think at this point, this is a public meeting, and we do have an opportunity for public comment. I don't think we have any green cards, but if you would like to make a comment, we have microphones, and so you can raise your hand, and Joe will bring a microphone over to you, and we can allow the public to share their feedback. And Sarah, as a member of the public who's provided probably the most public comment, I'm sure you've got to have at least one question or comment for us today. Actually, it's an important point, right? So nobody's had a chance to read through all of this yet. And this is an introduction. So this is a potential public comment, and Carrie, would you like to start?
Sorry, on. Well, I just would like to thank Jill, her staff, the Planning Commission, the GPAC, and the public, all the stakeholders, the community. This has been a phenomenal effort that we can improve the general plan that I have known for 30 plus years. So just a phenomenal job, and I think everybody's, right now you have to make that final effort to get involved, read these documents, provide your comments so we can craft the best plan yet for Half Moon Bay. Thank you.
Anybody else?
This will be a first if we get one public. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and close public comment. And I'm going to bring it back to the Planning Commission. I will, under advisement from city staff, remind everybody that we're not here to have a discussion about what's in the document, because none of us have had a chance to read the revised document yet. But I don't know if there's any comments that fellow commissioners have to make about this.
I'll just add, having served on the GPAC for some time and been involved in the Planning Commission, I'm really impressed to see where this has gone and addressing a lot of the long-standing questions that seem to perpetually come up regarding Isha and hosted views. And so just my appreciation for picking up the concerted effort to back that really tricky sort of issue. So I think the effort's obviously evident here. We look forward to reviewing it.
I too would like to thank all the people involved. I've been asked over and over again, working on this for how long and we've seen. So I think we're at a point where at least it's a starting point. And I think after we'll get through here, we'll have some idea, hopefully from Jill and others, what to expect going forward from a timeline standpoint, what the goals are. Also, how much work we as planning commissioners have to do, how much work you have to do, and when you have to do it, you're going to provide us with feedback and comments.
This is the first time I've seen a draft of one of these kind of documents that I can actually read. And I'm not being flippant about that. It's really well organized, and it really, for me personally, helps highlight particular issues that we can focus on and not be bogged down with flipping back and forth between different parts of ordinances to try to focus on a particular issue. So I know how hard this staff works. I appreciate it.
I'll open it up for public comment.
Before I forget, Jill, you referred to this layering map system as GIS. What does that mean? Could you tell? It sounds interesting.
GIS is an acronym that stands for Geographic Information System. So any of your digital online mappings, if you're looking at Google Maps, sort of the ability to add different data layers on top of a base map. So our aerial maps, and now we can add the biologic resources information combined with coastal views and zoning and all that other shit. So something that would be accessible to the public that individuals could look at from their homes.
Anything else for me? All right, Jill?
All right, let's talk about next steps, and also would like to respond to Commissioner DeMond's question about how much work is involved. You've got about 300 pages here, so it gives you some sense of scale, and you've probably got 150 or so that are coming your way over the next month or two. So we'll talk about that and the pacing and how we're going to get through it. So as much as I would agree with Chair Hernandez about the delight of reading Scenic and Visual Resources, which is a really lovely chapter, if you do want to participate at our first study session on November 27th, and we're trying to give a nice full month to get ready for it, it's going to be the natural resources chapter. Our biologist will be here, and this has been a really significant and important part of this body of work. And frankly, it has a contingency. We really needed it done before we could finish the development chapter, which is why you don't have it yet. We've been hoping to be at this point. So November 27th, 115-page chapter, 161 policies. It's your challenge over Thanksgiving weekend to get through that. We really do hope you'll find it to be organized in a way that makes it easier to get through. So we'd love your feedback about that. Access matters, and having the community able to review these documents is one of staff's core beliefs in ensuring that we're fair and open and transparent with our community to have that kind of a document. So feedback is welcome. It still has to be technical. It still has to be correct. It still has to conform to policy. So it's going to read a lot differently than what you're used to, and we hope you like that. So November 27th, we'll do that. We'd like to have a special meeting on December 19th because the Planning Commission's calendar's already full for December 11th. December 19th is a Wednesday. It's the day after the City Council's last meeting of the year. And we believe we can have a study session on those 4 chapters listed. They're chapters that you did see back in summer and fall of 2017. So they are less new to you, although they are certainly revamped. And they're shorter, and I think you'll get through them. well for that, and that gives you another month to get through that work. That night, we are preparing to give you the development chapter similar to what we're doing tonight. Introduce it, convey it, make it available on the website. The development chapter will come out that evening along with a framework chapter and an introduction. I'm going to note that the public works chapter is going to come a little bit later. It's going to come out in early 2019. We have to make sure that we vet the development chapter for a while with you to ensure that the number crunching that we're going to do for public works is accurate. So what we're seeing is my favorite thing is a January with 5 Tuesdays. I love that. Yes, sir.
December 19th, is that what you said?
Yes. Okay. And yeah, when you get that 5th Tuesday, we're going to see you maybe an extra time. So we'll plot this out. I want to be frank with you. I'd like to screw it down and tell you exactly what we're going to do each day in January, but we need to see how the November meeting goes and the December meeting goes and what the needs are for each study session. And we will respond to that, and we will have the right people in the room. If we need a consultant in the room, if you need other staff people to support the discussion, we will make sure that we can be flexible and serve the community's needs as we move through this process. So again, be open about your interests. I'm at absolutely have an open door at City Hall all the time. So if you're digging through this and you want to come and talk, just walk in, and Brittany and I are there. So when we're done, what happens? Well, we're going to package this up and get it to the City Council promptly, and from there, this goes on to the Coastal Commission. We are very much hoping to be through with this series of study sessions the first quarter of 2019. And we'll go at the pace that works for the community, but we've done a lot of backstory work, so we think you're ready to do this. We're ready to do this, and we're glad you're doing it with us. And we thank you. And the website, again, it's going to be back in action with these refreshed documents. You should be able to find this tomorrow if it isn't up already now. We've been working on that. We'll have a hard copy in the library. We'll have a hard copy at City Hall. There are, just so you know, in the hard copy version, and what you might want to do at the library, are the nice 11 by 17 maps. You could come here and make copies of those, or we could help you with them at City Hall. So they read better that way, so I encourage you to get a little bit bigger map. And is there anything that we missed? Okay, and that's it for this item.
Excellent.
Thank
So
you.
we'll close the study session. Jill, do you have the director's report?
And I lost it. Hang on. Yes. Your next meeting is November 13th. You'll have 2 projects with initial studies and mitigated negative declarations. One is an addition to the Mariners Church. Another is a new home at 698 Terrace. In addition to that, you will also be looking at a lot line adjustment for agricultural property on Kelly Avenue. So note, those are 2 CEQA documents. We're going to get them to you this week. We want to make sure you have it because you've got all this reading to do, and you'll have that reading to do. And on December 11th, you have 2 really important kind of capstone projects for 2018, and they also involve CEQA documents, initial studies, mitigated negative declarations. One is the Highway 1 North project. That's the new signal at Terrace Avenue on Highway 1 with a lot of other supportive components, including some bike ped trail and extension of frontage road, and the other is the Parks Master Plan, which you'll be reviewing, and with that CEQA document, we can move that on to the City Council for final adoption of the Parks Master Plan. So you're busy. We've been busy getting these things ready for you, and we appreciate that you're going to be reading a bit. So thank you.
Very good. Are there any planning commission communications? Very good. With that, I will close that, and can I get a motion?
Move we adjourn.